Dwayne Johnson is here, but you may know him better as The Rock. Initially a former pro football player, he became one of the superstars of the billion-dollar wrestling industry. His autobiography, The Rock Says, was a New York Times bestseller. He is now an actor. His latest film is Walking Tall. It is an adaptation of the 1970s Walking Tall film. Here is the trailer for the film.
Tall.
I am pleased to welcome The Rock to this table. Welcome.
Thank you very much. Pleasure to be here. Thank you.
This acting thing seems to be going well. Tell me about learning to act and what's important and how challenging it is. And because you look on screen as somebody who's adjusting film by film, getting better step by step.
Oh, I appreciate that. And it's important to me to be prepared as best as I possibly can. When I first broke in the business in the film industry, it was probably about 5 years ago with The Mummy Returns. And even with that little role, no English dialogue, no chance of screwing up. 5 minutes on screen. Even then, I wanted to really immerse myself in the craft of acting and hopefully one day become a decent actor, and make sure that I was doing everything I could possibly do and not leave any stone or rock unturned, no pun intended, but just to go out there and hopefully do a decent job.
Yeah. Are you taking lessons or are you learning the whole process?
Oh, absolutely, yeah. And again, it goes back to me. I believe that, the small steps that I can take to becoming a good actor, not only working with other good actors and good directors, but also finding really, really good acting coaches. For example, even with The Mummy Returns, again, Egyptian dialogue. But still had a really good acting coach. And, so how do I say...
Well, that movie did well, too, didn't it?
Yeah, it did great. Yeah. A lot of money, sure.
So when the process started for you and the opportunity came, was there any sense of this marketing notion that you could step into the shoes where Schwarzenegger was?
Sure. That's a great question. I honestly, I never had that mindset. At that time, I just thought, and here's the thing too, how you always hear about the acting bug. Oh, here she got bit by the acting bug. Well, I always thought, well, this acting bug thing, it's like Hollywood jargon. I didn't really believe it until I was actually in Morocco filming The Mummy Returns. I thought, man, this is great. I would love to be part of this. I would love to do this. Look at this. There's a lot of people around, millions of dollars. You know how the industry is. So I was really excited. So I can honestly say, I got bit by the acting bug. I got bit by something else, which made me really sick over there in Morocco. Well, I'm not too sure what it was.
Well, yeah, right.
But I did.
May have been in the water, maybe in somewhere else.
It was some other type of bug. So for me, the thought process I wasn't thinking, wow, Arnold, he's getting a little older, who, by the way, is a good friend of mine. Stallone, we're all good friends. Bruce Willis, I never thought, wow, I'd like to take the place. I just thought, wow, I'd like to make movies that deliver. And, and that are pretty decent.
But you can think of yourself, the interesting thing about what he did is that he used the strength of the fact that he came in playing the kind of roles that you played at the beginning, too, and used that increasing marketability to stretch. Clint Eastwood did the same thing after Dirty Harry.
Yeah, it's one of my favorite actors.
Mine too.
I know. I saw what you did with that. Exactly. Was fantastic. Yeah.
Let me talk about getting to that. There was a time in which you thought about playing professional football, coming out of the University of Miami.
I did.
Miami University.
I did. Sure.
And it didn't work out.
No, it really didn't. I failed. And anytime you're at a program like that, a big school like that, and there's a lot of people around you. I played with great players, Warren Sapp, Ray Lewis, and you watch these guys enjoy the fruits of their labor. They're signing these multi-million-dollar contracts, and you work so hard for something for 5 years, just like I did. And you commit yourself, and you sacrifice things. You have no money. And then when draft time came along, I had a dismal senior year. I got hurt. Got beat out by Warren Sapp, which, I'll take that one. And
he did all right.
Yeah, he did all right for himself. I thank him every time I see him.
I know. I'd say he'd rather. The question is, Warren, would you rather be where The Rock is, or would you rather be where you are?
So I'm happy where I'm at. But
because you're at the beginning of a career, and he's
sure. Well, I think he's going to do great. I think he's going to finish out his career out there in Oakland. But I had such a dismal senior year, didn't get drafted, no free agent contract, sitting on my butt now thinking, what am I going to do? Instead, I signed with the CFL, and I played up in Calgary, and it was horrible. It really was horrible.
The stories of how you lived.
Sure. It was bad. I had no money to begin with, but then to go up there, and I was making $300 a week Canadian in a 2-bedroom apartment, living with 4 other guys, one guy in the living room, and literally we got our bed out of a seedy sex motel, to be honest with you. Out in the back, they were in the trash, and that was my mattress with urine and everything else you could possibly imagine that was on it. And so that was it was very, very humbling. And so I lived like that for about 2-3 months, and I got cut from the football team. And after that, I went back home to Miami, and at that point, I knew, like, I'm done. I want to close this chapter in my life.
Did you have to call your father that night? I mean, your father seems to have had a profound influence on you.
Well, my dad and certainly my mom.
And your mom,
for
both,
sure. Yeah,
sure. But he had a wrestling experience.
Oh, exactly. Yeah. So there was that connection. So when I went back home, the night I got home, now my girlfriend at that time, who ultimately became my wife, she was struggling too, trying to make ends meet. As a matter of fact, the ends could not have been further apart for the both of us. So I had said, I don't want to play football anymore, and I think I want to try wrestling.
Why did you think that?
You know why? Because I grew up in the business. I grew up in wrestling. And I loved wrestling, growing up. And I always thought, like, I never ever want to live with regret. I thought, if this is something I want to do, and I said, I would like to try this. Because I couldn't think, like, 5 years from now, I couldn't fathom not trying it and thinking to myself, man, I wish I had. I wish I would have. So I got to be honest with you. I was telling her, I said, so I'm going to try. I called up my buddy who let me paint in the summer. Kay, do you have a job? Sorry, I don't have a job. Thinking, man, what am I going to do? She said, and it was probably about 9 o'clock at night. She said, you need to go now. If this is what you're going to do, then you go and you pursue your dream, and you give 100% effort, like I know you will. Man, I got goosebumps talking about that, because that was real. And I called my mom.
It's a hell of a partner to have, isn't it?
Man, it's priceless. It's priceless. And I called my mom. I said, Mom, I need you to come get me. I need Dad to come get me. So the funny thing is that, so she's like, hold on, and she puts my dad on the phone. Hello, hey, Dad, you got to come get me. For what? Well, I'm down here. I need to come up. And finally I just said, Dad, you got to come get me. So he drove down about 3 a.m. We drove back to Tampa. I'll never forget this. I had literally $7 in my pocket, and it wasn't all paper. I had some jingling change too. Yeah. And that was the beginning, so to speak. I started to train about a month later with my dad.
He bought onto the idea that you could do this. Here's what's fascinating.
Charlie, by the way, real quick, he could not have been further from the idea.
He didn't buy into it.
He hated the idea. He was adamantly against it.
Because he had spent a life in wrestling? Or?
Because he spent a life in wrestling. And I remember arguing with him for days on end. Bad arguments. Because I'm there in Tampa. Now I'm 23. At 18, you leave home and you're ready to tackle the world. You go to college, get your degree. Now at 23, I'm back in with my parents in this little 2-bedroom apartment in Tampa. And adamantly against it. And I understand now, as a man, and now me as a dad, I understand what he was trying to tell me without telling me, which was, look around. I've got 2-bedroom apartment, $500 a week or a month I have to pay for this. I don't want this for you. I was a wrestler for 20 years.
Right.
So it was until
So why did you believe, listening to his resistance, that you could do it? Hey, because Dana was telling you could do it, or
Danny, actually,
right?
Sure. It was something, I think, something like innately in me that made me think. And I remember telling my dad, that he would say, well, what do you think you have to offer? This is when we were arguing. And I said, I have no idea what I can offer this business, what I can offer the world of professional wrestling, what I can offer this world, period.
So there was no grand scheme coming from you. There was no sense that we can create this character called The Rock.
No, not at all.
You didn't even have the name at that time,
I didn't have the name, no.
Yeah.
No, not at all.
There's no idea. You just believed that when I look around, it's the best option I have.
Sure.
And it's in my blood.
And I felt like, well, this is something I got to do. I got to try. And I remember saying then, I just feel like I have something to offer the entertainment industry, period. And he thought I was crazy.
Yeah. Now, was there a role model? Was there somebody you said, what I want to be is what he is?
Oh, I see what you're saying.
Yeah.
Man, you mean actor-wise?
Well, I mean, no. If in acting, you could say Schwarzenegger, or you could say Bruce Willis, or you could say Clint Eastwood, or you could say, who was it in wrestling that was a role model, and you said, I want to be, he represents what I want to be?
Oh, sure. I got to be honest, hands down would have to be my dad and my grandfather. My grandfather was a professional wrestler, too.
Yeah. And
those two guys, I mean, they mixed a lot of talent and athleticism and a lot of charisma and together. So I would look at them, and oddly enough, I would look at them and want to aspire to be that. But at the same time, I wanted to get away from their names. I didn't want anybody to know, essentially. I'm very proud of where I came from, but I wanted to make it. If I made it, I made it on my own. If I failed, then I failed on my own, too, as well.
Why do you think you made it?
Oh man, I probably, you know what, I believe in hard work. I believe that hard work pays on a lot of levels and not necessarily financially a lot of times. And I believe in being very persistent. And I think a lot of factors culminating have helped me. Luck.
Well, what if some young body, somebody in your position, someone like you, someone who had the ability, but might not be able to cross over to superstardom, what would you look for? What would you say to them, you know, in order to make it big in this business? You got to have these kinds of talents. Would it be mainly acting talents? Would it be mainly a storyline? Would it be mainly a physical quality, or would it be all of that?
Well, I think you hit the nail on the head on a couple of different levels. Number one, you know, physically in your appearance and how you look, but at the same time,
unique and different and commanding.
Well, yeah, but you know, a lot of guys aren't necessarily that unique or that different, and I think for me, I think if I were to look at someone, like I always tell people this all the time, and even young kids for that matter, like I believe that you either have an intangible, an X factor, or you don't.
That's the word I use, X factor, all the time.
You either have it or you don't. It can't be taught. And I don't know what it is either.
Yeah, nobody does.
Nobody really does, but it's just that thing. And I believe that it has to come from an honest place.
And it's hard to pick it out in people too. You know, some people say you can sense about someone they've got that X factor, that thing that makes the difference between people who do well and people who do great. You know, but you can't always see it. After, was it satisfying? Was it a great career? Did you think, I could do this for a long time?
Very, very satisfying. You know, and frankly, it didn't really work out for me. Like in the first couple of years, first year and a half was very difficult, and I was actually on my way out of the business. Again, failing. Just what I mean by that, when I first started, my wrestling name was Rocky Maivia. It was a combination of my dad and my grandfather's name, and getting booed out of the building because fans are fairly savvy in the entertainment world. They understand who's getting pushed, who's not, who's new, who deserves it, who doesn't, to their standards. And for them, I got too much, basically too soon in the wrestling world. And not only that, but I wasn't given the leeway, the creative leeway, just to be me, and just to be honest.
How'd you get that?
Well, I was failing as a good guy, and what happens in the wrestling business is when you fail as a good guy, then basically they turn you bad. And once they turn you bad, you will likely not make it, and then you'll just be on your way out. So it came where they were like, well, you know, you're really not working out. Here I am, 25. Now I'm thinking, man,
you're not making it as a good guy.
Not making it as a good guy. Now I'm thinking I'm going to be on my way out of the business in about 6 months. And now I'm thinking to my law career, because I had a degree in criminology. So now I'm thinking further. And they said, so what do you think about turning bad? And I said, yeah, I would love to. And I said, but if you could just give me a little bit of latitude creatively, if I can write my own monologues, if I could just write a little bit and just let me be me. And the executives, if you will, were like, yeah, no problem.
This is the World Wrestling Federation and all those guys?
Exactly, yes.
And so they say, show us what you can do.
Say whatever you
Let me see your stick. Let me see your thing.
Exactly.
Wrestling is at the point where everybody understands the way it works now, don't they? I mean, there's no sense of piercing behind the curtain.
No, not at all.
It is appreciated for what it is. You know, and that's in fact what the World Wrestling Federation did. They gave it a sense of theater.
They did. Absolutely.
And acknowledge to the world, this is what we're doing and this is what the audience likes.
Oh, absolutely.
And so we'll just hype the theater.
Right, you know? Exactly. And that's what Vince McMahon did. Vince McMahon spearheaded that probably about 10, 15 years ago, where he outright came out and said, this is entertainment, and we just want to entertain. And
we know what we are. We're entertainers, and we're going to give you the best damn show you've ever seen.
Exactly.
You know? Who first came to you with the idea that maybe, at the top of your career as a wrestler, that maybe acting? Just try this bit role, whether it was Mummy or whatever it was. Was Mummy the first or the second?
It was the very first.
And then, whose idea was that? Was that your idea? Was that your agent's idea? Was that a director's idea?
No, you know what it was? It was, at that time, I just hooked up with my agents, Darren Statt and Marty Adelstein, and we were trying, and even then I told them that, you know, I would love to become an actor and hopefully become a decent actor, and I just want to wait for the right role. And we waited around, and then finally got the call from Universal about The Mummy Returns. I talked to the director, Stephen Summers, at that time, who was just fantastic, man. I love that guy to death. And he said, you know, I'd love for you to do this role. No English dialogue. He said, but I think it'll be great for you. I said, I love it. It's fantastic. And then that's what happened.
What I love about this story, for me, who love stories, it is the notion of being down and coming back.
Sure.
Twice. First at Calgary.
Sure.
And then being a good guy in wrestling. And now having your entire life ahead of you, depending on the ability of how you package the sense of how you how you go from one profession to another. Take a look at this. This is a scene from Walking Tall, which Chris Vaughn, played by Rock, discovers a casino is providing drugs to the community and takes action. Here it is. Roll tape.
Looking for you.
Guess that changes our relationship a bit, huh?
It's great to meet you.
Oh, thank you.
I'm
Great
happy to have you
too.
here, and I look forward to having you come back. Walking Tall is an MGM film, and it's in theaters beginning tonight, Friday, April 2nd. Thank you for joining us. See you next time.